another development that we are getting to know. This is a massive times now impact as far as Air India and the kind of episode that was witnessed by the woman on board the New York to New Delhi flight. Now, what is being called as fine that has now been imposed by the DGCA, the airline watchdog. This is against the airline itself. So a financial penalty of rupees 30 lakh, we are told, have been imposed on the Air India violation of the applicable of DGCA civil aviation requirements. And this is very important to note because here the airline seems to be not taking that appropriate action when it should have been right after this episode was reported back in November 2022. In a bid to skirt the issue, in a bid to cover up, we are looking at now that the airline watchdog DGCA has come down heavily on the airlines itself and have imposed a penalty of 30 lakh rupees. Madhav, what more do we know?
Following actions that have been taken in this particular case, including a financial penalty of 30 lakh rupees that have been imposed on Air India for violation of the applicable DGCA civil aviation requirements, the license suspension of the pilot in command of the said flight for a period of 3 months for failing to discharge his duties as per Rule 141 of Aircraft Rules 1937 and applicable DGCA civil aviation requirements, and also a financial penalty of 3 lakh rupees that has been imposed on a director of in-flight services of Messrs Air India for failing to discharge her duties as per applicable DGCA civil aviation requirements. This is very important because the DGCA has noted that this incident of passenger misbehavior which occurred on AI 102 flight on 26/11/2022 from New York to Delhi came to the notice where the passenger conducted himself in a disorderly manner and allegedly relieved himself on the female passenger. They issued show cause notices to the accountable manager of Air India that includes the director of in-flight services and the pilots and cabin crew members of the flight as to why enforcement action should not be taken against them for dereliction of the regulatory obligations. And after examining the written reply of Air India and the personnel involved, these are the enforcement actions that have been taken by the DGCA. But remember, this is only as far as the DGCA is concerned. The legal troubles of the individuals involved and those responsible have not ended over here, because clearly in terms of discharge of their duties, the cabin crew members, the pilots have all been questioned by even the police authorities, including the airport police in the national capital Delhi. So clearly it is perhaps not over here, but at the level of the DGCA action being taken and decisive action at this point of time in terms of the airline itself, a 30 lakh penalty, something that was normally not seen, this kind of a penalty that has been levied on Air India for violation of the applicable DGCA CAR or civil aviation requirements. And also very important, the pilot in command who failed at multiple levels, he failed to provide an alternate seat despite the fact that there were seats available in the first class, is an allegation that has been leveled. Also at the same time, the individual concerned was the violator was not subjected to the law upon landing in the national capital. All of these are very, very serious violations of the pilot in command, and therefore his license has been suspended for a period of 3 months for failing to discharge his duties as per Rule 141 of the Aircraft Rules. And lastly, the director of in-flight services has also been...
So it's a massive times now impact that we are talking about. The action that should have been taken by the airline back then, wherever since the episode was reported, Aditi, it has invited a serious penalty and other actions as well that have now been initiated by the DGCA.
Well, there has been a demand on Times now seeking action in this horrific incident, and now the DGCA has slapped a 30 lakh fine on the Air India. Now over here we have the press note by the DGCA, and in the press note it is stated that accordingly following enforcement actions have been taken in the incident case. Financial penalty of rupees 30 lakh has been imposed to Air India for violation of applicable DGCA civil aviation requirements. The second action that has been taken is license suspension of pilot in command of the said flight for a period of 3 months for failing to discharge his duties as per Rule 141 of the Aircraft Rules 1937 and applicable DGCA civil aviation requirements. Now the third step is the financial penalty of rupees 3 lakh has been imposed on Director in Flight Services of Air India for failing to discharge her duties as per applicable. Now those who have violated their rights and their duties have been charged with several levels of penalties in this letter by the DGCA along with the pilot in command and director and the Air India.
All right, so that would have been insufficient as the response, Madhav, that would have been filed by the airline to the airline watchdog. DGCA. Now it seems in response that even when it comes to a financial penalty of 30 lakh rupees that have now been imposed on Air India when it comes to the violation of the applicable DGCA civil aviation requirements, and it seems that even more stronger penalties have been put forth even to those individuals who were said to be responsible at the time to initiate an appropriate action ever since that the episode was reported on board the New York to New Delhi flight. As we are talking about the massive times now impact that it has already been showing here, in fact, when it comes to the director in flight services of the Air India, all pilots and the cabin crew members of the flight as to why enforcement action should not be taken against them for dereliction of their regulatory obligations. The written reply of Air India and the personnel involved were also examined, and what has now been decided thereafter, the show cause notice that was issued to the airline, the DGCA has finally swung into action to take action against the airline and the staff itself, with a financial penalty of 30 lakh rupees that has now been imposed on Air India for violation of applicable DGCA civil aviation requirements, the license suspension of the pilot in command of the said flight for a period of 3 months for failing to discharge his duties, and other financial penalties have also been imposed. That is a massive times now impact that we're looking at. Let's quickly shift our focus